Hello, today we're going to be interviewing Anne. How are you, Anne? What's new?
I'm fine. Yep.
Good.
Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Just been, oh, goodness, had okay work day. Yeah, nice work day. Just been working on situational judgment test items. More recently, looking at a personality test thing. Yeah. What have you been up to today?
So I worked this morning till
Mhm.
early afternoon, and then I was just doing usual stuff with at home, kids and things, and yeah,
Ah, do
nothing
you have
overly
many?
spectacular. I've got two kids,
Okay. And how old?
um, 4 and 11,
Okay.
and so just tucked the last one, the older one, in like 2 minutes ago.
I'm trying to pin your accent. It sounds slightly Scottish, but at times also slightly German.
Yes, that's because I am German originally, although now I have dual citizenship,
Mm.
and I spend most of my time in the UK in Scotland. In fact, I've lived in Scotland
Oh,
longer than I've lived in Germany. Um,
wow, wonderful. So you're in Scotland now, then?
yeah, I'm in Edinburgh.
Fantastic. I love Edinburgh. I go there in the summer for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Let me turn that off. That's making noise. There we go. Yeah, no, I go in the summer for Edinburgh Fringe. Haven't been recently, but I've been
Hmm.
looking for a chance to go there. And so, what caused you to spend time in Edinburgh? Was it because you met your husband?
No, well, kind of, but I so I moved to the UK initially just to attend school. It was meant to be more of a temporary thing. I went to boarding school in Scotland for like a friend of mine had gone to boarding school and she said, "Oh, it's great fun." And at that particular point, things were slightly tricky at home. And my parents said, "Why don't you go and spend a little bit of time in Scotland as well?" And it was meant to be temporary. So that was in 1996. So I just turned 16. And temporary turned into long term. Like I didn't go back. So I finished school, whatever, a year later, and then went to study in Glasgow. And then um, subsequently worked in various places and then ended up more with work across towards near Edinburgh, and then I met my husband, and so that's where I settled down here.
I see. No, fair enough. And what did you work in? Do you still work?
Yes, I'm a doctor.
Ah,
So,
okay. And what made you want to go into medicine?
that's a good question. Hmm, hmm. Um, I'm trying to be very careful with this interview that I'm not going to say something that doesn't actually properly reflect the truth, which could be easily done. You just say something and it doesn't really um, reflect true events. So I think hmm, like I knew other people who'd gone into medicine, so it was something that I knew about. So I had at least an idea of what it might be like. Um, I thought it would be interesting. I thought the human body is interesting. Um, and certainly as a young child, I often played doctor or vet or nurse. So it wasn't like a completely alien idea either to be kind of looking after people or whatever. Um, but I think actually, probably at that particular point where I decided that I was going to do medicine, it was more for pragmatic reasons than anything else, because I thought, well, I could see myself doing this. It was maybe not like absolutely the thing that I would have thought would have aligned with my deepest interests or passions, whatever. But I knew, well, that's going to result in a stable job with a reliable income. And at that particular point in my life, I really felt that that was an important thing. So.
Okay, so how much is security? How important is that to you?
It's quite important, yes.
Okay.
Financial security is very important, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And where do you see yourself in 10 years' time?
That's an interesting question, because I've always struggled with those sort of questions, not because I don't see anything in the future, but because generally my future is a bit, they're often sort of slightly like things that maybe people wouldn't necessarily expect, or they're a bit strange things. So I kind of tend to, whenever I've kind of almost gotten into the habit of saying, I don't know, or making something up, because I feel a little bit like sheepish about saying the things that I actually. So I suppose I could tell you a couple of things that I would perhaps. I guess there's a difference between saying, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time, and what sort of a thing would you perhaps like to happen at some point in the future. So, okay, so I'm going to just leave that open and say I'm not entirely sure, because I don't know precisely where I'm going to be in 10 years' time.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, and so outside of work, what are your hobbies?
Okay, so the main hobby that I've had that's sort of been persistent throughout my life has been music, in various permutations, like different things that I've done musically. But that's been a sort of frame that's been recurrent for most of my life. So I've done, like I would say, I've always been very, I don't know, creative, I suppose. Like as a child, I used to always just sing to myself and just be constantly making something up. And I've played instruments from quite a young age. And then I think in my teens, I didn't particularly, I wasn't that creative musically in my teens. I just kind of played music. I sang in choirs, played in orchestras. And then I think sort of, I don't know, maybe around about 2021, I suddenly just went, no, I've got to write music, and kind of went back to that and took it a little bit more seriously. And at that point decided, well, if we're going to write music, it would be useful to, do something, because I didn't have a piano at that point. And so the only instrument I had at university was the cello, and I just didn't feel it was that, maybe for writing songs, it's not that suitable. So I taught myself to play the guitar, and started writing songs. And then later, I think at that point I thought it would be nice to play in a band, but that didn't happen for a good few more years. But then I played in various bands. I've performed my own music, and I've played in cover bands. I've played in other people's, in bands, other people playing original music, kind of working on their arrangements. So, and I've done quite a lot of just recording my own music, recording for other people. So I've done a lot of music in different ways.
Okay, what is it that draws you to music?
Okay, it's something that I've always done, and it could be because my dad's very musical, although he's very, very intellectual about music in a way that I'm not. But maybe I was just sort of surrounded by that. And I don't know whether maybe if I hadn't been surrounded by that, maybe I would have been attracted to other creative outlets. I'm not sure. But I mean, basically what I like about music is, well, okay, so again, I'm just going to be careful. I'm not going to say anything that's like totally ridiculous and not entirely true.
Okay.
So I'm going to divide it up into the different kinds of music and what I like about the different things that I do. So just first of all, playing music, like irrespective of whether it's my own music or whether I'm doing cover bands, or like I enjoy actually the physical sensation of playing. So I've played bass guitar as well in bands, and it's just a really amazing feeling. And you just hit the bass, and it's really loud.
Yeah.
So I enjoy the physical sensation of it. I also very much enjoy the sort of, it feels like you're creating another space. It's like another world opens up, like something that you don't normally see, and it's there, like yeah, a world of sorts. And that's something that I particularly enjoy about writing music, is like you're creating something that wasn't there before. So it's like another world, another space, something that wouldn't otherwise be there. Trying to think what else. I like the expression of emotion in it. Like it's trying to explain this. They can express emotion safely through music in a way that it's much harder to express verbally or just interpersonally.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, as I say, there's just this sort of room for creativity. It's just kind of fun, you know, you sort of play something and then add something else to it and just see what happens. Like, I'm not terribly methodical. Like I can be methodical when I write music, but a lot of the time I actually quite like to just see what happens. You know, I quite like improvising and yeah.
Okay, thank you. And do you have difficulty sharing your emotions with people?
Yes.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think maybe I don't always feel safe to share them. Sometimes I find it difficult to know, particularly in the moment. Like if I'm in a situation where someone else maybe says something or does something that would perhaps, where an emotional response might be appropriate, I would feel like I wouldn't in the moment know what the appropriate reaction would be, or how I feel in that moment. I might later on, like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. So just to confirm, so one, it may be a lack of safety, but also a lack of actually knowing how you're feeling and needing to process those emotions first.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's created a bit of problems in my current relationship, that my husband will sometimes ask me how I feel about something, and then I would actually just be really quite struggling to maybe articulate it or even know it sometimes.
Yeah, understandable. Okay. What do you find to be the hardest thing about your job as a doctor?
So I'm a GP, just because obviously there's lots of different things I could be doing. I find the most difficult thing attention to detail. I find detail difficult. I used to struggle, but I've actually, strangely enough, lately gotten better with this, like very recently, say over the last year. But I used to struggle a lot with staying on track, like not getting sidetracked, not during the consultations, but during the admin bit. Like I would just find myself constantly like losing track of. So if you're writing something down, like if you're like entering, like if for instance the consultation was complicated and or I was maybe running late, so I wouldn't be able to enter the consultation immediately, like either during the consultation or afterwards. So I'd have to go back and do it. I would find it so difficult to just kind of just write the words, like, it'd just be. So I would find myself like getting a bit inefficient with that. So that used to frustrate me, but I have actually gotten a lot better with that. But the trick is that I try and write almost at the same time as consulting, even if it's just like bullet points. And I'm just I try and make sure it doesn't come across too like artificial to the patient, because like you get lots of communication skills training and stuff as part of it, and one of the things obviously you get taught about how to create a open atmosphere, pleasant atmosphere for the patient, and kind of sitting there and typing as the patient tells you their story isn't exactly what you're meant to be doing, but I find it really helps me to do that. So the other thing, what else do I find difficult? Mm, yeah, it's just detail, like, paying attention to emails and just because guidelines change all the time as well. And like sometimes it's just really arbitrary. Like it's just, there's some studies come out and then a year later it changes again. And so you kind of always have to stay on top of that. And it's just a bit tedious, that kind of a stuff. I used to find when I was a medical student, I used to find the actual consulting very difficult. Like I used to feel really nervous and shy about consulting. And I must say, even to this day, if someone else observes me consulting, I get really like nervous about that. Because part of the thing would be, that was twofold. The communication things, there were two things about it that I found difficult. One was actually following what the person was saying, so that I wouldn't be like getting sidetracked halfway through the sentence or sentences that they were saying, and like totally like, because I used to find myself like having to constantly ask the same things over and over because I couldn't retain what they were saying. And the other thing, but again, that was with training, like that got loads better. It was just a case of, learning to focus. And the other thing was, I was a bit nervous about dealing with kind of maybe emotionally tense situations, but actually, again, through practice, that got better. And as I say, we've got a lot of communication skills training. You get taught a lot of kind of tricks and how to, and actually I find it now really quite easy to establish rapport with patients, so I don't feel particularly worried about that aspect now.
Okay, thank you. And where does your mind go when you're having difficulty with details and also following people in conversation?
Okay, so I can't remember in the past. Like all I know is that I had that problem, but I can't remember where my mind went to. Like, but say nowadays, I still find my mind wanders, but I've somehow gotten quite good at still listening at the same time. And like I hear something, like so something that would happen, it would be like someone tells me something, I don't know. and then I think about that thing, and then I think about, like, it could be anything. Like, it could be, for instance, that I would then reflect on that, something like that happening to me, and then I'm suddenly stuck, like, thinking about myself. I'm like, no, I'm meant to listening to that person. or I find I'm thinking about something more theoretical, that I'm analyzing it, and then suddenly I'm thinking, well, I'm actually analyzing now something when I should actually be listening to what they're saying. So, like, I mean, I suppose a perfect example would be typology. You know, they say something, and you go, "Oh, that's that thing," and then suddenly you find yourself, I wasn't actually listening. I was thinking about that thing. Well, that's not very good. So it could be that. Those would probably be the commonest things. I'm not quite sure, because, as I say, the problem was much more marked when I was younger, and I wish I kind of knew. I wish I could go back and know what it was that I would be thinking about, because, as I say, it's changed. I've managed to kind of change that. But even, like, in general, my mind just wanders, like, really, really easily. Like, it could be anything. It could be anything. But it tends to be, I suppose, things maybe something I'm currently preoccupied with or interested in. That's maybe more likely something that would be good, like, my mind would wander to.
Okay. Fair enough. And what are the situations where you feel the greatest confidence?
I feel confident in situations where I can come up with hypothetical explanations of things. Like, so if someone says blah blah blah, and I go, I wonder whether that's because, or yeah, that would be a common thing. Like, I would feel quite, like, good about that. Like, I would go, like, that would be something that where I would feel a sense of confidence, like that it would. Yeah, so conversations where that's allowed make me feel confident.
Okay.
Trying to think. Yeah.
Go on.
And
Go on. Sorry.
I was going to say, and I do have quite a good sense of aesthetic awareness. Although that's more of the interesting thing is that's more something that other people tell me. So it's almost like that's something other people are more appreciative of about me than I am. But yeah, that's probably also an area of confidence.
Okay. How do you handle confrontational situations?
Give me an example.
So let's say someone is being unfair. Someone is being a bit of an asshole, as it were. How do you handle that situation?
I tend to try to, it depends, really. It depends what they're like, and, like, whether I feel threatened by them or whether I think they're just being a bit annoying, or, I think I generally try and find out maybe, well, why are they saying this, or if I think they're just being very close-minded, which is something that actually irritates me. I don't like people who are close-minded. I will maybe try and politely point out alternative viewpoints. I would say to them, well, actually, you could also look at it that way, and sort of, yeah, I'm not someone to get too easily then into, like, a heated situation. Like, I tend to stay calm in those situations generally. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And let's see, what is it about your husband that makes him closer to you than anyone else?
This is a bit of a tricky question because he joined the Navy about 2 years ago, and he spent an awful lot of time away, and it has altered our relationship a little bit. But he is coming back. But we're probably not quite as close as we used to be. But let me think about, so being able to talk, like we used to just be able to talk about a lot of stuff. And we did a lot of music together. And yeah, that would be, I think.
Do you have many friends?
No.
Ah.
I'm not someone who has many friends, never have done.
That's okay. Do you have any friends?
Yes, I do have some friends. Friendship is a funny one because I'm not very, like I usually, like at any one time will have a couple of close friends. But I'm not terribly good at staying in touch with people. Like, so I mean, I do have some friends still from university, but generally it's those people who make the effort rather than me. I'm not really good at that. I'm also, this is a strange one actually. Although I find it quite easy to establish rapport with people, I don't find it easy to make friends at all. Because it's something about the next to, for instance, I could meet someone in some kind of situation and get on perfectly well, have like a really, really nice like conversation, maybe even feel like there's a connection, more than just a superficial banter. And then I'll go away and I have no desire to contact that person again or to yeah, it's kind of quite weird that. And it's almost, I would say pretty much all my friendships have been the result of the other people making the effort with me.
I see. Okay. Are you a very busy person? Do you like to be busy?
What define busy?
Keeping yourself very active, doing lots of things, not having much spare time.
No, I'm not. I wish I was. No, I'm quite bad for just daydreaming, just getting carried away with just my thoughts and not really doing very much.
Okay. And so what have you been daydreaming about today?
I just have to think about that. Well, today I was, I don't know, daydreaming is maybe not the right word in that context, but I guess it's a more broader umbrella term. But today I was thinking, for example, I was thinking a fair bit about this interview, and I was thinking about what kind of things I might be saying, and that kind of a thing. And I generally obviously today there was a specific event that was going to happen that created those thoughts, but I generally, maybe on other days, or if there's not something specific like that coming up, I can be thinking about like really like things that maybe I don't know, I analyze stuff. Like I kind of go, so I wonder whether this is because of this, or this is because of that, or or I kind of think about the future, what I might do, or I I don't know. Like I definitely like it's very hard to say. Like I can think about anything. Like I can think about, like I ask myself, like it can be sort of things like I see something, like I look out the window and I see a bus going by, and I see a person sitting on that bus, and they have, I don't know, I don't know what they might have. There might be something about them that then triggers an idea. And I think, I wonder what that person is like. And then I think, and then I suddenly think about people in general who are like that. And then I suddenly think about, how does that link in with something else that I know? And then I think about, and then I wonder whether that explains why such and such. Or, it's like, yeah, it can be really vague. But it's usually, I'm usually coming up with theories or something that to me, I don't know, like I like to think about why things are something, or yeah.
When people around you are feeling down, are you able to cheer them up?
I'm not that good at it.
No. Okay. No worries. And at home, do things tend to get messy?
Yes.
Hmm.
I mean, I tidy up, but things definitely get very, very messy. And then I'm like, oh my God, if anybody saw this, they would call it social services. So then I go, right, I better just get it up to sort of like an acceptable standard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Let me think. So, what are 3 words people would describe you as?
Open. That's something people have said. They said I'm very open, open-minded. Nice. People say I'm nice. Analytical or deep thinking, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Would you find it more difficult to have to push or influence people to do things, persuade people to do things? Or would you find it more difficult to keep track of all the precise details about certain people?
I'd say the first, influencing people.
That's the harder one.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you say you are a decisive person?
Yes and no. I mean, when the situation calls for it, I can make decisions, definitely, absolutely. But I have a tendency to change my mind a lot about a lot of things, or just let stuff go, or like, I wake up one day and I maybe have an idea of something that I can do, and then by the evening, 1,000 other ideas have come, and I've not made a decision of any sorts, so I'm not, I think on the whole, I think on the outside, I will probably appear, like, to people who know me well, they would probably say I'm indecisive.
Okay, because you tend to make a decision and you can change your mind on that decision.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem deciding, like, if I went to a restaurant or something, deciding what I'm going to eat. Like, I don't have indecisiveness to that degree, but I have difficulties deciding, like, on, I don't know, maybe bigger things.
Okay, no worries. Is it easy for you to change your mind on the big things once you've made up your mind.
Yes. And it's a big problem. Like it's like I can feel like oh, I want to do this thing. Like for instance, I could say, oh, I want to do a PhD or something, which is something that I wanted to do for a long time. And because as part of my medical degree, I took a year out, and like it was an option that we could do that. And I joined the science class that did microbiology. So I joined the 4th year honors class in Glasgow, and I really, really enjoyed that. It was actually my favorite year out of those entire years at university. And I loved the research project. I loved that. I just loved it. And I did really, really well in it. I got the class prize in the year and everything. And then I thought, no, but it's better I go back and finish my medical degree, and then maybe do my first kind of just get my registration and do that, and then go and do a PhD. But that kind of thing just doesn't work for me. Like once I'm like, I just, and then something else happens, then something else happens, like then I think, oh, well, that could be a good thing. And then that could be a good thing. And then that could be a good thing. Like it's really hard for me to set a big goal and then go for that, because there's always other things that come along. And then I'm like, oh, well, that's quite a good idea. Or that's going to be quite a good idea. And then before I know it, that thing never happened. Yeah.
Okay. So you talked about music. Now, do you like performing?
No.
Why don't you like performing?
I get very nervous. I don't like performing. Well, I like playing the bass because the bass is easy and it has a sort of, it carries itself. Like I don't really have to do, like it's quite commanding, and it's easy, and people don't notice mistakes. And but on the whole, I don't particularly like going on stage performing. I get very nervous, and that's actually probably the biggest issue I've had with the whole thing, has been that. And people say, oh, we like you going on stage. We really like when you do this. We like your cello playing. You should play that. And I'm like, oh God. And then people say, you look so serene on stage. And I'm like, serene? I was dying 1,000 deaths. I was so serene because I was like this.
Okay, no worries. Okay. And oh goodness. Do people feel that you have a lot of factual information in your head?
I have been told that before, but now this is the interesting thing. Like if I'm interested in something, then I will know a lot about it. And then I can very, very easily amass a lot of information, and I can very easily understand like quite kind of maybe complicated concepts as well. But I also tend to forget stuff relatively quickly compared to some people, I find. And I have a sort of, I feel almost like my brain stores information more in a compressed way, like rather than the actual information as it is. So it's like, the reason I'm saying this is I'm not just, I have thought about this before because I had a conversation with someone about this.
Yeah.
So I didn't just make this up on the spot, but it's a bit like, for a lot of things, I will only remember those things that I feel have the biggest yield. So things that allow me to deduce something from it. So, or I will just remember maybe the take-home message. But it's a sort of, that because I'm not terribly good at just remembering just the detail itself. Like I can only really remember things terribly well if they're kind of interconnected. So for example, at school, I was very much into, like, believe it or not, this is like super geek alert, but my favorite subject was Latin. And I really liked how the grammar, certainly with the text that we not, I mean, I know more kind of later Latin became a lot more loose, but it was very like the grammar was very strict and reliable and predictable, and all of it, like the whole thing, you know, it was just a very nice thing to learn the system, and then you feel like you understand it. And so I don't know whether you know much Latin at all.
Oh, I did it for A level actually.
Yeah, so like you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
So yeah, so it's compared to some languages. So for instance, I also did French, which I really enjoyed. I found French okay too, grammatically. But English, for example, I found a nightmare because it was like all idioms and things like that. You just have to know how to say it.
Yeah,
There are not that many rules that really tell you how to say things. So I actually
yeah.
found English really difficult. And the other thing about languages was that I tended to not particularly enjoy speaking them. I like just sort of understanding like the grammar of it and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so the reason why I'm saying this is because basically, oh yes, I was going to compare it to some other subjects I had difficulty with, like history, for example. I really struggled with history because it's just events. Like you have to remember the years and things like that. Okay, fair enough, if you know history in great detail, then it also becomes coherent. But I think the way we were taught, it was often just kind of a row of facts, and I couldn't remember that very, very well because it wasn't connecting. So the point I'm trying to make is, yes, I can intermittently amass a lot of information and come across that way, but I also lose a lot of information if it's not really connected to something. I'd struggle to remember it. Sorry, did you hear that there?
Sorry about that. For some reason, every single time I have an interview in this house, the connection goes funny, and I manage to get it back. Okay, Anne, I'll tell you where I am at the moment. Okay, so I'm very high percentage sure that you are an alpha researcher.
Okay.
So.
Oh, you're frozen
So
again.
what? Oh, hello.
Yep. Okay,
Hi.
you're back again.
So what I'm trying to do now,
Connection.
you are. Hello. Can you see me?
Hello. I can see
Hello.
you. You're
Good.
freezing
Oh,
intermittently.
goodness. Any better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, where I am now is I'm very sure you're an alpha researcher. Do you know much about the alpha quadrant?
Yes, I'm not. Which one is the researcher?
It's NTs, intuitive, logical, in
Yeah.
alpha. So, as you said, your learning is one where it can be very much compressed. The idea being that you want the theoretical structure underpinning it and all the possibilities connected together by certain abstract principles and rules of a finite number.
Yeah. Oh, frozen again.
Oh, goodness. I don't know why this is going on. And yes, and also your problem with learning history was the same that I had. I learned history after I left school, and I got a sense of the overall narrative where everything fit together on the tree of that the big story. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. The question is which one you are, and this has been trickier for me because I've had difficulty establishing which set of capabilities are comparatively stronger than the others. So what I would expect is this: with LIIs, they tend to have a greater awareness of their levels of, say, comfort and sense of detail in the day to day. They tend to be more attuned to that, and they can be quite, as a word, vulnerable to changes in their physical surroundings, things getting too intense. They can feel easily overwhelmed by that. Whereas for ILEs, they don't have that issue. Instead, their issue is one of they really want to set a certain emotional impression on other people. They usually want to be liked, they want to be admired by other people, they want to appeal in that way, but they're not very good at preserving and maintaining their personal relationships. And usually, except for that one or two people who they feel especially close to, they struggle with maintaining friendships outside of that and knowing how close they are to people. And I could see evidence of weaknesses in both. Certainly, you said that there's a difficulty in terms of processing your emotions, how you feel about certain things. Although you could establish a rapport, which is more extroverted ethics than introverted ethics, which leans more towards ILE. Also, in the workplace, it's the details which seem to be the problem, and your mind keeps on going to other places. There's lots of extroverted intuition there. At the same time, I think I asked you about influencing people and trying to make some sort of impact people are doing. You sided more with remembering more of the personal details about other people, which maybe asked a bad question there.
I think it's quite difficult. Yeah, I think. I mean, I should maybe talk a little bit about what it was like when I was younger. Like,
sure.
There was an interesting thing that when I was a child, and that would probably lean slightly more towards ILE than LII, but you will be able to kind of tell me what you think. So I taught myself to read age 4. Apparently, like, I don't know, like, everybody else in the family claims they didn't teach me, but I figured out how to do the decoded the letters, whatever. And then once I was able, and yes, and this is the this is the interesting thing. I do actually, even though this is so long ago, but I think it was quite an important event for me. I do remember the motivation behind it. I do remember distinctly because my brother was a real bookworm, and my sister was very close to my brother, so she tended to emulate him a lot. So both of them read a lot. And I think they also partly used it as an excuse not to always have to play with me. They're like 5 and 6 years older than me. And so I would often say, can you play with me? Can you play with me? And they're like, no, we're reading. And it really bothered me. And so I felt such a great sense of achievement when I could turn around to them and say in all earnestness, when they said, Anne, do you want to do this thing with us? And I could say, no, I'm reading. And I felt so happy that I could just tell them that. And then, but I don't believe it or not, once I figured out how to read, I had no desire to read because I found it boring. I used to get sidetracked on the first page. I was like, this is boring. I want to do something. I just went off and did my own thing, like whatever. I did lots of different things, but I did get, like, I couldn't even focus long enough on to actually get into a book, which I think probably is more of a sign of high extrovert intuition. I think the other thing is I was actually quite a confident and outgoing child. And although I didn't have many friends because I wasn't all that bothered, I was actually quite popular in class because I was quite, and I did a lot of things. I like organized stuff, like came up with this circus idea, and I came up with a music piece, and I told everybody in the class what they should be playing. It was just a little improvisation, and I got them to kind of. And the other thing that I did as a child was, whenever I was given homework, I wouldn't just do the homework because I would get really into it. And then, as I say, well, I'd write 10 animal names, and I would be writing like the whole page because, like, oh, this is great. Or like in maths, they would say, do this. And then I would make up my own questions, more, just my own questions. I really enjoyed that. And I would hand that stuff in to the teachers, and they were like, oh, that's great. But then when I went to secondary school, which in Germany was around about the age of 10. Well, yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to bore you with all the details of things
It's
that
okay.
happened. I was a year younger than everybody else because I was moved up a year in primary school because I was just too advanced for that year that I was in. And so when I went to high school, we moved town. I didn't know anybody, and I was the youngest in the class. I was weird. And like everyone was just like, what's wrong with this girl? And the teachers were not particularly like supportive either of, like if I did something that I wasn't meant to be doing, they were like, no, we don't want you to do that shit. And so I became really, really introverted and like stopped wanting to really like, and that's I think where I stopped kind of influencing, like I stopped kind of engaging with people actively at that stage. I just sort of stopped having that kind of that desire to push my ideas onto people. And so like I think maybe that's where this is but I do think, because this has been a sort of mystery I've never really been quite able to solve, is that why I went from being really quite an outgoing, very creative, quite industrious almost person to just being just stuck in my head and like, yeah.
That's interesting. That's exciting. Yeah, it looked as though I could see all your strengths, but I couldn't see any of your weaknesses getting a one up over any of the other weaknesses, and that seems to me to be unusual. But what you described there, it's almost as if you had a clearer set of difference in your weaknesses, more of the outgoing side, more of the impulsive side, but still lacking the sort of self-discipline, that sense of seeking closure to your ideas, which you see being a bit more for the LII, less for the ILE. So it's almost as that part as that development has sort of been reversed to some degree. But still, and as well, you sort of capitalize on your stronger functions rather than your weaker functions. It will certainly fit ILE over LII. Then it's interesting that you got a lot more expressive when you were describing that. But yeah, that's interesting. No, I think on balance, ILE makes a lot more sense than LII, because I can't see in the narrative of a lifetime a time where you were more distinctly LII, not ILE. So yeah. Now, I am curious. What did Eric type you?
INFJ.
Okay, interesting.
And it didn't, and I challenged him on it. I got him to type me again, and he typed me again INFJ. Although he didn't go in with an open mind the second time round, he was more just going, well, I've typed you INFJ, so I'm now just going to see whether you can give me enough information that will convince me otherwise. And with him obviously having dominant extrovert intuition as well, he found it very easy to kind of concoct like weird hypotheses as to why anything I was saying could still fit with INFJ.
Yeah, that can be a possibility. That is one of the traps for ILE. Often, instead of being open-minded to changing their structure once they've made it, instead they'll find lots of different ways why it actually is the right structure. Which can be
the interesting thing was is that he repeatedly said, oh yeah, I do that thing. Oh yeah, I do that thing. But then went, I don't know why he felt so sure that I couldn't be an ENTP, even though I kept giving him information that was pointing towards that. He never, interestingly, you know how he loves his TI tests? You know how he tests people, you know how he does that sort of kind of genealogy thing, and then he does the kind of, I don't know, that stuff.
No, not a good way.
He never actually did that with me, which I don't know whether that would have swayed him one way or another. But for some bizarre reason, even though I had in total 3 hours with him, he never did his TI questions with me.
Oh goodness.
Which is
you'd think you'd want to do that if he's giving you INFJ. But look, there is often an issue for people who are typing other people that you'll be a bit protective about who gets access to your type. You know, you identify as that type because you think, oh, people who need to be this type need to be really like me. I need to really see myself in them for me to feel comfortable giving them my type. I think that's good. You get a bit precious about it. I've seen that in myself, and I've had to tried to correct that with myself, especially when talking to someone who is a woman rather than the man, because it's a lot harder to see yourself in someone of the opposite gender who's the same type. So yeah, there can be different reasons.
Well, this is the interesting thing because, like, obviously, I've seen him type quite a lot of people, like, you know, on his videos and stuff, and I really felt, I know this is like, yeah, I felt like he was biased towards me, like because I was being smiley and female, and he like because within 10 minutes of talking to him, he was already saying, "You're an FJ of sorts. I get so much extroverted feeling from you. You're an FJ." And I kind of was a bit like, and at first I thought, yeah, maybe that's right. And then the more I was thinking about it, I was like, no, there's something not right here because I'm, yeah, it just wasn't adding up. So
What I will say, Anne, is that is also a good reason to think ENTP, well, ILE over LII. If he was seeing in that when you were sitting there on that day with him and you were showing more extroverted ethics with him, it's a good sign for you more to be an ILE than an LII. I
yeah,
didn't see as
probably, yeah.
much of that for most of our interview, but it came out a bit towards the end. So
Yeah,
yeah, and like
I can
yeah, go on.
I can be quite animated. I know I can be. It's a sort of thing that comes out. Um, it's a weird thing. It does come out in sort of social interactions, and then
Yeah,
it just like disappears
yeah,
again, and like, and then I'm suddenly just this completely. It's like my husband always. He's like, you know, you can be so like I can be really, really expressive with people. Like he says, it's like this, like I'm a different person when I'm with other people, like especially people I don't know very well. I'm very,
yes,
and
yeah.
then I am this complete, like, what do you feel about this? What do you like? Like, or I had this really good friend once upon a time say to me, Anne, this is really weird. Like when you first meet you, you think you're really happy and bubbly and cheery. And then as soon as you get to know you, realize you're like this really dark, morose, analytical, intense person. It's like this complete, like,
I find that it's the thing is it's because extroverted logic and extroverted ethics both play a big role in ILE. One is the thing which you take for granted. The other is the thing which you put on either when you're comfortable or when you really are trying to push for some sort of big gain with someone, and it might backfire. So ILEs, when they're meeting new people and they're excited with possibilities, their extrovert ethics can come out quite quickly, and they can want to make a big impression on people, and they like the idea of making positive impressions on people. But when they're not in that mode and they're sort of just resting back on the more comfortable part of them, which is more boring, I should say, not as excited about it, it's their matter of fact communication and just speak lots of facts at people. That's easy, conveying information. And yeah, for the first lot of the interview, I thought you were some sort of extroverted logic type. I was thinking LSE. No, too much. Not. I'm not sure about sensory. That's another clue earlier on. I asked you about where you saw yourself in the future. I thought that as being is that weak introverted intuition, but then later you had lots of intuition with extrovert intuition, which came out. So I thought, no, maybe that can't be weak introverted intuition. But I realized that what makes sense is ignoring introverted intuition. That you don't think too far ahead in terms of one outcome because you have lots of different possibilities, which would be another reason against LII in favor of ILE. It's funny how all these sort of things are coming out now. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm, I'm,
yeah, yeah.
I'm quite confident of ILE, and yeah,
Thank you, thank you. That it does align much, much better with. It was. I had thought. LII, but then I've met other LIIs and I thought I'm not quite like them.
No.
But ILE was the other thing that I thought. I had even at one point contemplated whether I could be like, I don't know. But then I realized that it's that sort of, it's the on-off switch of the extroverted feeling. You know, like, because sometimes I can be so like, I mean, people have made jokes about me, like Robo Anne, Android, you know, because I can be so, but then, and so I even thought maybe I'm an ILI or something like that. But then I thought, no, but they're not so scattered, and then they don't have extroverted feeling that comes on suddenly. Like they just don't. Yeah. So I just thought it doesn't. Yeah, that was actually, as a final thing, that was a funny thing that Eric said at one. he was he asked me whether I wanted to do some music with him, and this brought on a very classic case, which always this happens to me always, where people suggest something, and instead of me going yeah or no, or I just go and so I did that, and he was like, your demonstrative FI is letting me down. And I was thinking,
Oh goodness. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay. Oh dear. I think there's also probably problem that Eric is not a purist. He sort of combined different ideas together in a bit of a mishmash to have his own theory.
Yeah.
He's a bit, you know. Oh dear. I'm going to need to have a debate with him. I meant to have a debate, but he's always on it so late at night. I don't actually get to do it with him. I'll need to challenge him with a few points, primarily about cognition, but others. But yeah, I'm glad that what I came up with is something which you identified more with. Were you thinking then ILE for yourself before you came to this interview?
No, but it had always been one of the types that I strongly contemplated. I think I had lately really talked myself into being an introvert. Like that's the only thing. But I did think LII, but then something about it I thought doesn't quite sit. So no, I'm quite happy with ILE, because it's the polar FI that I've recognized in myself, and that's created huge amounts of problems for me actually through the years, which we don't need to go into this out of time. But it is something that I have definitely recognized in myself, and it is actually really helpful to have that confirmed as well. You know, that I'm not going mad, and yes, that I'm ILE. It's actually
and if it's any, but I'm probably a pretty good person to talk to when it comes to vulnerable introverted ethics problems, because I myself would be an ILE. So feel free to pop me a message later if you have anything you want to talk about in that respect.
Well, thank you very much. It's been extremely helpful.
You're very welcome. If you want to keep in touch with my community, you've got the Facebook group as well, World Socionic Society, which might be.
Oh yeah.
If you're on Facebook, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, Anne, and take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.